the school system teaches you that time is linear. Therefore, if you messed up in the morning, chances are you are burning yourself out because now you feel that you are letting yourself down because you did not do that one thing in the morning that you said you were gonna do, and it's a slippery slope from there because you say, well, I already had a bad breakfast, might as well have a bad lunch, right? Might as well have the extra cheesecake because I already broke my diet. That's the mentality that we get into, right? However, when we can understand that us changing the way that we're looking at time, and we say, hey, you know what? The day actually has 3 periods. It's the morning, it's the afternoon, and it's the nighttime. That means that even though I didn't necessarily master my morning, I still have 2/3 of the day left. And that's something that I personally have seen a lot of impact when it comes to how I choose to look at time. If you're struggling with discipline, you are probably struggling with manifesting. And the reason for that is because your discipline is directly correlated to every aspect of your life. Whether it's you're looking to lose some weight, whether it's you're looking to get a better job, if you lack the discipline to help you achieve these things, you're never going to get there. So in today's conversation, I have some tips for you to really help you in this process. I'm going to be giving you 6 tips that are essential for you to ensure that you're really helping yourself in this discipline goal. Okay, so this is my blueprint. I'm going to share with you some strategies that have allowed me to really change my mindset from thinking that discipline was actually something negative to really knowing that discipline is essential for my life. So with that being said, let's get started into today's Walking Manifestator episode. Now, I do have my notes, so if you're watching on YouTube, please bear with me if there's something that I'm referencing back. As I mentioned before, I'm changing the style of the channel completely, and I've done my podcast geared around sharing information with you guys. But from the beginning, I wanted to make it more laid back and more like a conversation. And I have slowly transitioned into feeling more comfortable with just referencing stuff, because I had this belief that if I was looking anywhere else from like the camera, that it was going to be a disservice to you guys. So if you're listening on podcasts, you don't even have to worry about this. You're gonna keep hearing my same old me. But if you're watching, you might notice that. So I just wanted to make sure that I put that out there. Now, with that being said, let's get started. And the first thing is going to be plan ahead of schedule. Now, this one for me is a game changer because I really take the time to now plan for things that I before thought doesn't really matter. I can get it done during the week. It's not going to really be a big deal. But boy, was I wrong. And let me give you an example. Something small that I recently incorporated, and I would do it before, but I wouldn't do it as often and I wouldn't plan. So it was like, well, you know, I'll have my shake and I'll just plan it in this morning. I'll make my shake. So now I'm actually planning my breakfast every single Sunday. I make sure that I prep everything so that I can really be setting myself up for success. I put some chia seeds inside of my oats. I put some hemp seeds. I put some honey, some cocoa. I put a bunch of very nutritious and healthy things. So when I prep my overnight oats and I get it in the morning, it, number one, is satisfying my hunger that obviously I'm feeling after the gym. But number two, it was a no-brainer. It was something that I planned for ahead of schedule, and it made it easy for me to execute and really feel happy, because I'm not sure if it's happened for you, but I think we can all relate. When you're not planning, chances are, if you're tired, especially if you just got home from work, you're gonna resort to getting junk food. You're gonna resort to something that's fast. And that's where the discipline starts slowly fizzling away, right? Because you told yourself the night before, oh, I listened to that podcast and yes, I'm gonna change my mindset. And you know what? Yes, these are things that I can incorporate. But then the morning comes and life happens, you get busy, you're out the door, you're back in the same familiar paths that you are always in, you're on autopilot, and then nighttime comes around and that thing that you said you were going to do just goes out the door because you're tired, right? So this is why this part of my blueprint has been essential. If you can really get comfortable at planning these things out, something that for me, I do also is my gym routine. So I already know, depending on the week, I'm either going to start with my either legs or I'm going to start with my upper body. And that just helps me eliminate one thing when I go to the gym, because before I would have to look at a routine, and then that's where the inconsistency happens, because you watch this one girl do this one amazing routine and then you watch another amazing girl do another amazing routine and you're like, oh my gosh, which one do I do? Well, just choose one, right? And that's what I did. Personally, I got very clear on my routine. I literally wrote it down. Mondays, this is what I do. This is how many reps. This is what I'm going to be going in for. This is going to be Tuesday. This is what I'm going to be hitting. I just eliminated one extra step that I had to think about. And that right there is what helps you avoid, and I want to make sure you keep this in mind, the decision fatigue. Because a lot of the times we're in this stress, right? Over anxious over everything that's happening in life. So it's easy when you're going back home from work and getting upset with your boss to just stop at Chick-fil-A because it's healthy, but it's not. It's not, right? So these are the little things that if you can plan ahead, will start making that habit that is going to bleed into my second tip for you, and that's change the way you see at time. So what I mean by that is when we change the way we're looking at time, the things we look at change, right? And this is going aligned with when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. So for me, this is something that goes into quantum physics. And if you're not in our community, so this is probably gonna be something that if you've been following along, you'll understand. If not, you should definitely join the community because we talk about a lot of this stuff. But quantum physics teaches us that in reality, time is not linear, okay? So when we can think of time happening in the everlasting present, and that we are literally entangling time, and a way I want you to see it, the way that I see it in my head is like, instead of 2 hours having to pass by, which 2 hours, let's say you're going to get started on your new, a new work project that you have. Okay. That's a perfect example. And you're working on this project, but you think the only way that you can get to the final product of this project being turned in for your boss is that you need to spend an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of time with this project, right? Because you're operating from the mechanical, because you're operating from the masculine energy, you're forcing things to happen. You're looking at time as this thing that you need to obtain versus this experience that you need to feel. And that to me really has allowed me to change my perspective when it comes to the discipline throughout the day, because the school system teaches you that time is linear. Therefore, if you messed up in the morning, chances are you are burning yourself out because now you feel that you are letting yourself down because you did not do that one thing in the morning that you said you were going to do. And it's a slippery slope from there because you say, well, I already had a bad breakfast. Might as well have a bad lunch, right? Might as well have the extra cheesecake because I already broke my diet. That's the mentality that we get into, right? However, when we can understand that us changing the way that we're looking at time, and we say, hey, you know what? The day actually has three periods. It's the morning, it's the afternoon, and it's the nighttime. That means that even though I didn't necessarily master my morning, I still have 2/3 of the day left. And that's something that I personally have seen a lot of impact when it comes to how I choose to look at time. And call me what you want to call me, but I am telling you, when I sit there right before I go into my car and I'm going to an appointment and I tell myself, today is going to be a great day. I'm going to get there on time. Even if I'm running late, like I'm not even kidding. Like even if that day, like the boys were running a little bit behind schedule and, life was happening, I will get in the car and I will start setting affirmations saying, I'm always on time. I'm always early. Everything is always flowing for me. I kid you not, even the times when I'm supposed to be late, by some miraculous explanation, I will end up being at the time that I was supposed to arrive. And I think that this has really come from me releasing this concept of time, because I don't think of time the way that I once did. I used to think that I had to work very, very hard in order for me to get Walking Manifestator to where it needs to be, and that's how I was going to get to where I needed to be. But I remembered, why am I saying that? Like, if the real estate business, when I grew it to past my first 6 figures, I remember being in my mechanical energy, being so consumed by work hard and make sure that I neglect everything that brings me joy to make sure that I am bringing this real estate career to where it needs to be. And that was one of the things that made me feel the most empty that I have felt in a while, because I was neglecting the things that brought me life. And I was so focused on this masculine energy of bringing into existence this thing that I was going after, that I was performing in more scarcity, because in reality, I was operating from this field of not having it. So really changing how you see time is going to help you in bridging that gap that you're having with discipline. Now, number 3 is something that is very important for you to embody, and that's to pick a new identity. Now, this is what I mean. When you're picking a new identity, you're not operating from the field of, this is so hard, I don't want to go to the gym today. You're operating from the field of, I am this very fit individual that takes care of my life, that takes care of my external, way of being, that takes care of my internal way of being, that likes to feel good, not just look good. And therefore, I adopted the new belief of going to the gym, right? That could be that reality. Now, when you're still in this conflict of identity, you're not performing that in that sense. What you're going to say is, oh my God, it's so hard to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. I hate the gym, Alexa. It's so boring and I don't even know what to do. I don't even know if I should grab that weight. That weight looks a little intimidating. The other one, I saw that weird guy. Okay, so this is where we get into this concept of why it's so hard for you to feel like you're actually making any progress, because the reality is that you're not changing. So you're not changing, therefore you're not really going to align with that new version of yourself, which is that version of discipline, okay? Now, number 4 is something that I also personally think has really made a huge impact. And all of these are important. Okay, so this is my blueprint, so don't take them in any particular way. All of them are equally important. If you do one of these, everything is going to significantly change in a positive way for your life. I'm telling you from personal experience. However, my relationship with God, like, who is your God? And even if you're atheist, okay, like, bear with me here, because you have a God. And I was listening to this podcast the other day, and it really made me reflect on that, because I've heard a lot of people that don't believe in something. They're like, I don't believe in anything. Like, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything. I just believe life is, and that's it, right? When you live in that mindset and you haven't even found a God that you identify as your God, you're not living for something grander than you. And life is going to get very, very sad very, very quickly, because we have this part in our brain, and I want to read this to you. It's called our AMCC, which is our anterior cingulate cortex. This is actually directly connected to our will to live. So let's just say all you have in your mind is making more money. All you have in your mind is, I want to get that girl, or I want to get that guy. I want to get that house. I want that nice Cartier bracelet. I want the new whatever, right? These things that are happening, what is being programmed in your mind is that you're operating from this sense of thinking that something else is going to come to save you, to make you feel fulfilled. And the reason that this neuroscientist was actually talking about that we all have a God, okay? The neuroscientist, so I hope that helps. But he was mentioning how every single person has a God, whether it's your phone, whether it's the clothes that you worship, whether it's the shoes that you worship, whether it's your car, but you have a God. You work so hard for you to make sure that you do not neglect that, whether it's the makeup that you need to make sure you always buy. That is a form of service. That is a form of God that you are serving. And this is something that I didn't really see in that way. So when he said that, I was like, wow, that's a different perspective. Because if you think about it, right now, the reason why I can have this feeling of wanting to go out there and do more out of life and not just sit in my room and wither away is because I believe there's something bigger than me, because I've seen it, because I've felt it, because I've lived it, right? There's nobody that can come and tell me that what I've experienced is not true, because that's just not their life to live. I have lived my life, and I know what I've seen, and I know what I felt, and I know what I am devoted to. So it's important to understand that, because this is the reason why such successful people are doing extraordinary things, because they have this force that they're connected to that is bigger than they are. So when they're making the video, even if they get that person that's a negative Nancy online, they don't care, because they're speaking from the heart, and they know that there's going to be that one person that's going to resonate with the message, right? So I say this to you because you have a God, and whether it's the God that I resonate with, which is the source, the creation of everything that is in every fiber of us, whether you want to call it God, universe, source, it's the essence of everything that is. It's the reason why why we're here. So for me, that brings me a sense of knowing that it's not for nothing, that there is something bigger. And I've talked to you about soul contracts before. I highly encourage you to look into soul contracts, because it helps you just understand how life really is what you want it to be. And even when it's not, it's giving you what you need. So that part right here, where discipline is effortless when it's tied to something bigger, I really want you to sit on that, because it's really going to help you understand that you do have to validate that there is something that you're servicing, even if it's not a God, okay? Because I'm not here to push a religion down your throat. However, whatever that is for you, being open enough to receive and say, you know what? This is this essence, this energy that is grander than me, that I am going to continue to be disciplined for. Then we go into our tip number 4, and that is to leave the gray areas out. Now, this is an example that I'm going to share with you so that you can see how this applies to your life. When I share with you that you need to leave the gray areas out, for me, I don't like gossiping. Okay, I loved it at one point in my life. It was just exhilarating because it's drama, and it's just the rush, and it's just what our psyche has been conditioned to want and need a fix for, right? So I remember when I first started transitioning into not actually gossiping and just not talking negative. It started with like family members, like when my grandmother would come and tell me something about something that happened, I would just tell her, I'm not really interested in listening to that. And it slowly progressed into now she will not tell me anything about anybody, because she knows that I'm not the person that she can gossip with. I'm not the person that's going to go and say, yes, that person was so wrong and I can't believe they did that. Because in reality, what I'll turn around and do is I'll tell her how could she have done something differently. Because every time that I get upset with somebody, and in that moment, I lost that part that I could have just walked away from. Let's say it was with a customer service representative, something as small as that, right? Which I haven't done in a long time because I worked on this, but just an example of something that would happen, right? You get so mad with the customer service representative and you get triggered and you basically give them all this negative energy. And now, essentially, when you leave the gray areas out, if you've adopted this mindset of, that is not who I am, that is not my identity, I do not gossip, I am not interested in that low vibration conversation. You don't have to say it that way because I know that that could come across a little snarky, but to be honest, sometimes you have to be very brutally upfront to set those standards to make sure that the people that are in your corner are the right people for you. But anyways, there's ways that you can deliver that. And at the end of the day, having that clear mind of, I don't gossip, therefore I'm not going to hang out with people that are gossiping. So if I had, in this hypothetical scenario, friends that still gossiped, this would be the time when I would cut them out. This would be the time when I would say, you know what, I'm going to have a nice conversation with them and let them know like that's something I'm trying to change, and I would appreciate if they just didn't do it around me. However, if they can't do that, then that shows me that they're not willing to change in something that's going to help them be better. Therefore, it's not my job to change them. It's my job to change me, right? Then here on number 5, upgrade your beliefs weekly. Your mind is a software, okay? And it's constantly running these outdated programs. I've said it before, and something that I recently rediscovered and I really liked it was the person that is the host of Diary of a CEO. He was talking about how we should give ourselves the permission to upgrade our beliefs. And he was saying every single day, every single week. And, some people are saying every single day. I do agree with every single day. And I'm going to say why. Because if I learn something new today that directly contradicts what I agreed with yesterday, I'm not going to be this person that's stubborn and going to let my psyche win and say no, because I already put a video out there to my community of Walking Manifestator that this was my mindset. So therefore, I'm not going to change my mindset because how would I look? Something that has been the best thing I've ever heard from people that used to know me is, you're nothing like the person I used to know. And honestly, that's the best thing I can hear, because I'm not the person you used to know. I am a completely different person. And that's what you're going for when you're looking to incorporate discipline in your life. People are going to tell you you're changing. People are going to tell you you're different. And that's simply because they're staying the same. And that's not your job to deal with. That's not your situation. You need to focus on what you're looking for, if that's what you're going for. Now, the number 6 that I want to leave you with here as your little tip is going to be embodying your essence. And for those of you that have been following, you know that we recently launched a new part of Walking Manifestator, which is the feminine essence. This is all geared around embodying your feminine goddess, really tapping into that feminine essence that we have, that we've suppressed for so long because people tell us that we should be the good girl and that we should suppress how we feel and we should suppress what we think and we should suppress what we say. And that, we get into this mindset of like all men are bad, but we're not looking at how we can improve. So this overall movement is really geared to help you understand that you need to really cater to you and tapping into your divine essence. And that could be different for everybody. For me, tapping into my divine essence means that I'm giving myself the ability to listen to what my body needs in that moment. Let's just say I'm traveling, and let's just say I am out, perfect example, like what happened in Peru. I was out in Peru for 3 weeks, and the first week after arriving, I did not want to work out. I was very, very much I was congested. And then on top of that, I was a little, jet lagged and all this stuff. So I did not shame myself. I did not beat myself up and say, wow, Alexa, you talk about mindset and discipline, yet you didn't go to the gym this week. I didn't do that. Instead, what I did was I gave myself grace to say, okay, Alexa, we're going to take a time off. We're going to take a week, but next week we're getting back on it. And that's it. And I wasn't giving myself an option. It was just like, okay. And I wasn't feeling bad about the food that I was eating when I wasn't going to work out, because I knew that I made a commitment with myself that this was an area in which I was willing to tap into my divine essence and listen to my body and be in the now and not shame myself. And then ironically, after, you might think, well, maybe you gained a little bit of weight, right? Because you weren't doing what you were supposed to. I lost weight. I literally lost weight while I was over there because I wasn't stressing out over something that was not for me to control, and I was just letting things flow. So this is the blueprint to ensure that you're staying disciplined. And the last thing I want to tell you, and this is a fun little fact for you, there was a study that showed that this anterior cingulate cortex part that we talked about with the brain, how in people that are obese, okay, this part was actually shrinking. It was smaller. And people that were healthy, that part was actually bigger and stronger. And what this proves is when you choose to text your ex, when you choose to gossip, when you choose to not go to the gym, when you choose to keep scrolling and mindlessly going about your day and letting your day control you and continuing to embody the same old reality you've had, that part is shrinking. However, when you choose to continue to show up for yourself, when you choose to invest in yourself, when you choose to be around the right people, those things are what yield the result of this part growing, which is actually directly correlated to the will to live. This little part in our brain is directly correlated to the brain, to the part of us that allows us to feel this will to live. So if you have been feeling depressed, chances are you've been neglecting this part. And the only way it's going to change is by you making a decision. So with that, I want to thank you for tuning in to yet another episode for Walking Manifestator, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one.